I'm doing. Please stop me.
We all have delusions of understanding, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. There we go. I'm just waiting for the YouTube. There we go. Um, doing. So otherwise I hear myself again. Here I am laughing and laughing, and there you are laughing too. There we go. All right. So we got her all together, and we're starting on now. We're reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. And we have been going through a lot of how it came up to this point. The people that the um, the group that brought this beautiful course together. Where did it come from? How did we get here? And so here we are. Go ahead and shut my camera off. You don't need to see me. Here we go. All right.
Took
So
us, let's see, we're at 57%. And it's that's been about what, 15 months, something
something like that. Something like that.
inching our way through it. Well, I think it just is testimony to how much insight and inspiration Ken packs into any book he does, even a biography, which, as we've been talking about right along, it's like, our first read was like, what a cool biography about the late who scribed the course. Now it's like, what an amazing uh, collection of insights about our resistance to um, unlearning the ego and relearning the truth, and how Helen was just a stellar example of that for all of us. And to the depth and breadth of the insights that Ken shares is just remarkable. And even in a biography, he manages to make it very relatable to all of us, and the path we're all on of awakening from our dream of separation. Huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess, yeah, you're right. The first time I read this, and we've mentioned this, I just said, wow, this is interesting. Now I'm reading it and I'm going, holy cow.
And this is really, I'm not that this book is completely linear, which it isn't, but he's doing it roughly chronologically. And here we are, page 293 in the print version I have in front of me, on starting of chapter 10 today. And 15 months later, we're now just getting to the point where Helen and Bill begin to scribe the course. So there was a lot that led up to it. It didn't just happen out of the blue. Man, you're on mute, Lynn. So I'm just gonna, for people who are listening, just tuned
Sorry.
in, we're reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD. And I have us on page 293, beginning of chapter 10 in the print version. And it looks like we're about 57% of the way looking at your digital version.
Very good. Yes, and thank you. And yeah, I think what really is amazing to me, and we have two groups that are reading books by Ken,
Uh-huh.
the little books,
Oh,
uh,
great.
The Healing Power of Kindness and
Uh-huh.
on Parents and Children.
Oh, those are wonderful.
So we have
Yes.
a couple of those going on,
Hmm.
and then we also have on Tuesdays we're reading Never Forget to Laugh, which is the
Great.
Carol Howe biography of Bill Thetford.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so, we're getting insights into Helen, we're getting insights into Ken, into Bill, of course, insights into Ken. Um, and it's just so amazing to see how beautifully all of these things mesh together to bring about this incredible uh, I can't even call it a book because it's really just a communication from the Holy Spirit directly to my heart. I love it. Um, so um, so let's start reading. Do you want me to read or you want to read?
Well, why don't you go ahead and read?
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So we're on chapter 10, The Scribing of A Course in Miracles, circa 1965 to 1972. And just to mention that we just passed a milestone here. Um, Today is October 26th. It was October 21st, I believe, and it was 59 years ago, or somewhere, maybe, I can't even remember, well,
1965
1965,
is the year that the
right.
striving began.
So,
So that, which is embedded in the title of this
right,
chapter. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Mhm.
that's, I mean, October is a season when the veil is thin, I guess. So, chapter 10, describing of A Course in Miracles, special messages. On December 14th, 1965, Helen and Bill were told in an important message to ask the Holy Spirit for specific assistance to help a friend. In part 3, I shall return to the issue of asking for specifics and its place in the atonement path. Picking up with the teachings from the end of the last chapter, the essential theme here is that Helen and Bill not withhold anything from the Holy Spirit. In addition, Jesus is emphasizing the necessity of Helen and Bill asking for help together. Incidentally, the message begins with another statement of Jesus' wish that all personal material be removed from the published course. And that's comes up over and over and over. So this is the instruction that Jesus gave them. Nothing that relates to a specific relationship belongs in the notes, but you have been told that if you ask the Holy Spirit for specific guidance in a specific situation, He will give it to you very specifically. When you and Bill are ready to ask Him together what you can do for M, and in brackets, it's one of Bill's friends, um, He will tell you if you make no attempt to give the answer for him. Prejudge his answer not, for if you do, you will not hear it. But be sure of this: the Holy Spirit will never teach you to disrupt communication, but be wholly willing to let Him maintain it in His way. M is unhappy and afraid because he thinks communication through the body can be sought and found. It is no harder for the Holy Spirit to teach him that communication is of the mind and not the body than it is for him to teach it to you. The Holy Spirit will have no difficulty and much joy if you allow him to teach M this through you, but be sure that you are willing to learn it with him, or you will inevitably interfere with what the Holy Spirit would have him learn with you.
Mhm.
So this is, I mean, this is really clear. I'm hearing it for myself right now that, because, sure enough, as soon as I think of a problem, I start trying to come up with a list of solutions. Let me figure out how to do this, and let me figure out how to do that, and and what Jesus is saying about everything is just stop your thinking and allow yourself to do what the Holy Spirit wills. And that is probably one of the hugest tenets of this whole course, is that my thoughts, my what I have to add to the situation is not not really worth my breath, actually.
Well, what
Because
what we all add is, and the greatest gift we can make is by um, seasonal reference intended, electing the sane thought system moment to moment.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and that election we have complete control over individually, and but it collectively makes a big difference. Only because if we choose the thought system that includes everyone, then everyone benefits. And if we don't, we're just staying asleep in a dream that doesn't serve anyone. We haven't really done any real harm. We've just prolonged needless suffering for ourselves, which means that we're not contributing how as much as we could be by um, choosing against the ego. I noticed in that last sentence you read, that the quoted part, but be sure you are willing to learn it with him, or you'll inevitably interfere with what the Holy Spirit would have him learn with you. And I was thinking, well, the implication there is if we're learning without the Holy Spirit, which is to say, if we're learning anything with the ego, we're basically letting the interference, which is what the ego's whole modus operandi is, take over instead of the correction to that interference. So but that's what we're always dealing with all the time, isn't it? I mean, that's our classroom, is to notice how much the ego wants to interfere, not you know stage a nuclear attack or wage war against it, but just say, okay, I made this up. It's not serving me. Now, how can I, with that understanding, um, just let go of that insane thought system and um, recognize that there is uh, a real alternative in my mind all the time.
Absolutely. And, I don't want to extend the conversation beyond this, but as you mentioned, the election, I saw something really interesting yesterday, and I just loved it. This woman was, she was talking about, what she's, sees that as what I perceive as, differences between the different, candidates and their thinking, and the people who are supporting either one in their thinking. And she said, you have to remember that this is maybe 1% of their thought. This is, they are just like you. We are all the same. And we all have the same needs. We all want
Mhm.
safety. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want the same thing. And, the only difference is, how you think we're going to get it. And, if the plan that you have is different from the plan that they have, that doesn't make you the good person and them the enemy. That just makes you both mistaken in what what you're thinking. So, just remember that and they, you and they are not different. We're not
Right,
different.
right.
And if you look at, 99% of, I mean, these are the people that we live with, and my family, probably some people in your family, I don't know. I think you probably do have someone in your family that thinks differently than you do.
Oh yeah,
And,
quite a few.
and, and
The
yet,
the majority, in fact.
and yet, you love them because you know that what they are is not these thoughts. And what I am is not these thoughts.
Hmm.
These thoughts are thoughts that are just meant to keep me from listening to the Holy Spirit and to ask every time, what shall I say? Where shall I go? What shall I do? How am I supposed to do this? Let the Holy Spirit guide you. And those conflicts are gone because we know that there is a plan, and the plan is, what could you not accept if you but knew that all things past, present, and to come are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good. And you may not think that, but it's the truth. So, and I think that's what Jesus is telling Helen and Bill about this guy. They're saying, you want to help him, but you have to listen and learn your lesson along with him, as you pointed out. Be
Hmm.
sure that you are willing to learn it with him, or you will inevitably interfere with what the Holy Spirit would have him learn with you.
And it's really
So,
unlearning the ego's interference,
yeah,
because
yeah,
without the ego's interference, we wouldn't need the course.
right.
Without, which is basically, the ego is the thought system that perpetuates the tiny mad idea and doesn't even question its premises. And the Holy Spirit says, well, take a look at what this was founded on. It's a fraudulent idea. It's based on a lie that we haven't questioned, and we assumed, just don't look at the foundation of that lie, says ego 24/7. And we just keep doing that and wondering why Peace is elusive at times, and yet we set up the ego thought system to be the counter to peace, the opposition to it. Um,
Yeah.
it never phrases it that way, but that's basically what it is. The tiny mad idea is that there could be something other than perfect peace, perfect oneness.
Yeah, and we stay in that tiny mad idea. That's why he says, "Why do you ask how that could have happened? You're doing it even now." And
Exactly.
it's exactly
Exactly.
what we're doing. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and the thing that's so funny about it, Bruce, is that I recognize that as long as I want to see chaos, I'm going to see chaos. It's going to be out there because I'm projecting it. So it's the shift in my mind from wanting to see that fearful thought that is going to shift everything. And that's what we just were reading, the real world. What is the real world? It's when you shift your mind to see beyond the veil of the ego and the story, and you see the reality of the the real world. And I love it. Perception has a focus. I mean, oh my gosh. So,
Yeah, yeah, and
okay.
it has to have a target, and that's because the ego's thought system is just one gigantic blame throwing machine. Or, Ken Wapnick calls it the bag. What do you call it? Anyway, there's like you've got a quiver of arrows over your shoulder, and well, the grab bag of guilt. That's what he called it. And so as long as we're wanting to be separate, we have to, in order to maintain the separation, which takes constant effort and is actually exhausting, we need to keep essentially shooting arrows or projecting all of our unconscious guilt out uh, to the world. If even if it doesn't go any farther than our own bodies, as long as we have something that's external, seemingly external to us, upon which to unload our guilt, which is mostly unconscious, the ego says, "Oh, phew, God, I've been spared again." But
Yeah.
but but the Holy Spirit keeps reminding us, like, well, you haven't really done anything because the guilt didn't go anywhere. It's still in your mind. You thought you got rid of it, but it's kind of like Wile E. Coyote walking away from a trap he set for the roadrunner, and it's like, well, no, it's going to get you because it never left your mind.
I know you see those road runners down there in Arizona too.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah, that we do.
Oh, that's it exactly. I love it. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Okay, so I'll continue reading. Um, okay, so this is Ken again speaking and we had just talked about the um, that Jesus was asking Helen and Bill to remove the personal messages, the personal information
Uh-huh.
um, from the work. So he says there is one extensive set of notes that were written on separate sheets and inserted into Helen's notebooks. And in parentheses, he says, at this point, I do not know into which one they were originally placed, into parentheses, and which were not transcribed. While the exact date of their scribing is unknown, these notes can almost definitely be placed in this general time period. They would seem to have been written at one sitting, even though they deal with different topics. The message begins with Jesus commenting on Helen's scribing, specifically with noting the lack of effect Helen's ego had on what was dictated. This is a witness both to the part of Helen's split mind that identified with her ego and the part that identified with a deeper commitment to her function.
Can we pause right there? Talk about
Yes,
that because I
absolutely.
think I think that's so indicative. It's like, and I think you can probably relate to this too, Lynn. Is I if I well when I'm really tuning into Holy Spirit, I don't have to think about what I'm going to say. I don't have to worry about any of the specifics. It flows through us, and it's not coming from the Bruce or the Lynn or the Gloria or whoever else is listening when we're inspired and when we're tuned in. It's really coming through. the specific self that we think we are, that's just not interfering and letting the message come through without interference. It's only when we want to add our 2 cents, or which I think would actually be an inflated amount, that we get into trouble, because then we're steering it away from the reflection of what's true, it would seem. Anyway,
Absolutely,
yeah.
exactly, that's right. So yeah, that's uh so important. And yes, I know how it is to just be in that place and just
Hmm.
and just letting it flow and not even knowing. And sometimes I think it's a good thing I recorded this because I would never have heard this otherwise. It's pretty
Uh-huh.
amazing. It really is.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And it's a lot of times too, and I can think back as early as when I was starting to teach adult classes back in, oh gosh, let's see, when was that? The oh, late 70s in Northern California. And I'd have moments when I would be sharing things. And it's like, wow, that's pretty good. I wouldn't have said that. And you realize,
yeah,
when we really get out of the way, spirit really can work through us. And it's not like it's some kind of magical thing. It's miraculous in the sense that we allow the miracle. And I think that's what the course keeps reminding us, is we just have to get the heck out of the way, and,
that's
and
right.
let the Holy Spirit, Jesus, whatever label we want to put on, it doesn't matter. But that ego-free presence in our mind, um, just share that understanding that really is beyond anything we could come up with personally on our own.
Yeah, and to just remember that, even to just say that to myself, I will
Mhm.
step back and let him lead the way.
Yeah.
I'll take the second place and let him have the first.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's it's just throughout the course is all it's telling us is, let go and let God, let the truth pass through you, and don't interfere. And yeah, and um, I need do nothing except not to interfere. That's it.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is Jesus, and these are scribed notes that um, uh, were not put into um, the transcription. So
Hmm.
uh, this is a very different kind of material, I guess. So these are the notes. You will note that a lot of terms are used in the beginning that are later clarified. This is because the beginning was written by an unwilling scribe whose ego was in strong dominance and whose soul was dissociated most of the time. You may not realize what a strong testimony to truth these notes are without remembering that.
Hmm. Well,
Wow.
that's kind of ties into what we've been prefacing each of our conversations for the last year and 3 months-ish. So it's like, well, it's a testament to the fact that what we really are is so much stronger than all the resistance our egos can muster. And ego was just a stellar example. Or ego, Helen's ego
Helen, yes.
was just such a stellar example, and a reflection of our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's writing this down, so she's hearing this. Yeah, I
Hmm.
guess that it was uh, a strong testimony to the truth. So
Hmm. And the clarity that she must have been getting herself out of the way to write this about her own ego. Um, and I think if we can have that same kind of clarity of introspection, of not judging what comes through from spirit, and just say, well, when I look honestly at the shenanigans my ego tries to pull on a pretty regular basis, I don't need to condemn it, but I do need to look at it. And I think that's why there's so much emphasis on looking in the course. And
oh yeah,
and uh, and Jesus says in his course, together we hold the lamp that will dispel the darkness, and we must look together and hide nothing from each other, and he says, uh, well, Ken's comment on that line is, yeah, if we must hide nothing from each other, and guess who isn't hiding anything, and who's left then that needs to to be intentionally honest, which is to say consistent in our practice of the course. Because I think there is a part of our mind that is honest. I mean, that's what the Holy Spirit is.
Oh
It's the
yeah.
part this part that's absolutely honest. But the dishonest part, aka ego, will try all kinds of strategies in order to get its message through, which is to erase anything the Holy Spirit would come up with, because it's a threat. But nothing really can be threatened.
Exactly. And it's not because the ego is evil, it's just conflicted. And
Right,
it
right.
doesn't have it doesn't have a clear sense of itself, even as a reflection of God, because how can it
Mhm,
not be? How can there be anything that's not a
mhm.
reflection of God? And
Yep.
so, I've been reading a lot of different things about, why is it that we did this? And, from other teachers, reading the impersonal life on Mondays with Rev Wayne, and was very clear in explaining, why it is that, we chose this particular thing, is because we really, wanted to see what it was like, that there was a possibility, that we were uh, that things could be different than what God made. And of course, at every turn, it's being shown to us, no, it's not. It's not possible. It can't work. Any of these shenanigans are not going to work. That's it. So, so anyway, so this is Jesus talking to Helen, and she's writing this down as he's, giving her these notes, and he says, the sharp ascent upward in thought, which the development of the notes shows. And it is astonishing in human terms how steadily they evolve toward unity is due only to one sign of ascent. I asked her, Helen, to take notes, and she did.
Mm.
That is why it went zoop, is just like
Yep, yep.
to where the real beauty of the course, which it's really beautiful throughout. Every moment of the course is gorgeous,
Oh,
but
absolutely. And including every lampooning of the ego and expose of how, without mincing any words at all, how totally batshit insane crazy every ego ever was or ever seemed, ever is. Really seemed to be, because the ego is made up, right?
yeah,
We just,
yeah.
there's another place where, um, and it might be in this book, but I remember Ken saying, um, or, or maybe it's in the course itself. And Helen asked the question, "Why me?" And I think it was early in our reading from the last year or so. Um, you know, and the Holy Spirit's Jesus's response was, "Because you'll do it."
Yeah, because you'll do it. That's it. That's
And
it.
that's the same with all of us. If we will accept that responsibility, which is really just our ability to respond to that voice of kindness, of inclusion, of shared interests, and of innocence for all, and the true forgiveness, then that is all it takes. That's really just the prerequisite, is that if we're willing to do it, if we're willing to listen and respond, and just watch. We don't have to change anything, because the changes in behavior are just an effect. We just have to look at the contents of our mind consistently and more frequently and more quickly, and you know gradually that will transform
Yeah.
our identity completely, from one of a separate self to one of a all-inclusive self.
And I think somewhere he says, at first that might make you, upset, but it will eventually make you undescribably happy because
Hmm.
we'll have seen that. And
Yeah, yeah,
so that is let's ascend into that place. So
yeah. I'm just going to read a couple of things that Gloria put in the chat. That the Holy Spirit is the real alternative in my mind. It's the one singular reality when we get our personal sense of self out of the way. So anyway, thanks, Gloria.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. Thank you, Gloria.
Hmm.
So Jesus says to Helen, there have been very few real errors, and perhaps I can suggest that the first notebook be gone over again from her notes, not all of which she read correctly. Some of the changes will be seen immediately, and she will probably remember most of the others. Don't bother now. A lot has been omitted anyway. I love he's talking to her like, so he's saying, yeah, you got to go back and look at those notes because some of those things are not what I said. And I think that's probably good for all of us to go back and look at our notes and think some of the things we thought we heard were not heard. It's interesting because I was thinking as you were speaking about this whole business with Helen, she was really groomed up into this through the visions that she had. She had a knowing in herself that she had this communication capability. And so all of her protests and all of her thoughts about whatever her worthiness or whatever um were really I mean they were really answered a lot through those earlier channels because she did know that there was something else going on with her and something different than was going on with most of the people that she knew.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so Jesus tells her you got to go back and look at this stuff, and then and it's true. I mean, we're reading another book in one of our groups, and it's purportedly also channeled by Jesus. But as we're reading through it, we're going, well, that don't sound like Jesus. That don't sound like what these opinions and these ideas, that don't necessarily sound like the same message. And once you have that discernment about what Jesus would actually have been saying or doing, then it's real easy to look and say, oh yeah, he wouldn't have gone into a temple and torn stuff up. That
Hmm.
was not the Christ. He would not have
Yeah, probably
cursed.
not too interested in the dream at
No,
that
yeah.
point. Yeah.
So all those stories, that you have to look and say, does that sound like Jesus? And we know Jesus because we hear him every day. We listen, we read his book. I have a pretty good idea that, what he would say. So if I see something that don't sound like Jesus, I'm going to recognize that this may not be, this maybe needs a little scrub, like
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
is asking her now.
Yep.
Go check it
I,
out.
it as you're saying, I was just reflecting on a couple of months ago. I binge watched I think it was 3 or 4 seasons of The Chosen to get
Mm-hmm.
myself caught up to that. And it was interesting where they were attempting to be what one would consider historically accurate, and yet, biblical historians disagree on a lot of things, but I think they all agree that most everything that is presumed to be historical is like, well, we don't really know,
Yeah.
and largely fabricated. But it was interesting just to kind of watch the things that were said and demonstrated by the figure portraying Jesus, and that seemed in alignment with the kindness and the inclusiveness of what one would imagine that character exhibited, and then things that were just rank with specialness, that essentially exuded the problem with all religions, which is it becomes a we they paradigm that makes differences real, and ultimately is just another co-option of the ego thought system.
Absolutely. And I have not seen that show. I think I want to see it, but I'm just like, uh, I'm worried that it's got a lot of fabrications and a lot of,
Well,
I'm not worried about it, but it's like,
it there's parts of it that are lovely and inspiring and heartfelt, and then there's other parts that are like, well, okay, that kind of sounds like your traditional Bible bashing,
Yeah.
Bible
Yeah.
pounding, thumper, whatever the term jargon is. You know, I, well, we have to, include that because that's what everybody thinks, kind of thing. Well, it's like, well, maybe that didn't happen, maybe not quite that way, or and then even it's, I think it kind of it really is sort of it omits the point that, what if this entire world was made up? Is it really that crucial that we get a story that of a dream accurately?
Right. And well, I think, you have to look at what is the purpose of it.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
that's why I
exactly.
was going
Yeah.
to ask, is the purpose of it to remind us of our gentle heart
I think
and
there's
the love
plenty
that we
of
are?
that, and for that reason, if you have the least inclination to watch those first few seasons, I think you might find there's some genuine inspiration there, and there's it's a mixture. But that can be part of the classroom. And I think that's true of just looking at anything in the world. It's just whatever we're involved in, you just to notice, okay, I'm projecting ego here, or I'm extending Holy Spirit there, and just whether it's a movie or a TV series or a conversation you're having with family members, or watching politicians on TV, or you know pick anything that you're involved in at any given moment. Just say, well, here's my classroom. I get to look at what I'm doing with my mind.
That's
And
right.
that's the big election that gets overlooked. So I'm,
That's
I'm going
right.
to hopefully finish my little blog post on ACM blog, that I've got a great graphic that I use Chat GPT to generate, that shows a matrix of ballot boxes with votes being put in them. And the caption I put over the top of it is always voting, because we're always voting for either ego or Holy Spirit, which
Oh,
is
I
the
love that.
the important election, not that we should not vote on our this country's election
Yeah.
in a few
Be
days, but
normal.
just, be normal. But just keep it in perspective. It's like the much bigger election. That's like the ocean versus the drop in terms of magnitude, is what we're voting for every second.
Every second. That's right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Should I
Don't
pick
ask.
up where you left off on the reading?
Yeah. Let me go to the next page here.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, this last is a reference to the personal notes that were already taken out as per Jesus' instructions. Helen and Bill incidentally did go over the scribe material very carefully in checking for possible mistakes, and evidently caught the errors. I have also checked the early notebooks against the typed urtext and found no, quote, real errors, unquote. By this time, in the dictation, and then in parentheses, we're already well into the third month and in the current fifth chapter of the text, close paren. Any personal information given was not so woven into the teaching material of the course itself, as I've already discussed. This, coupled with the diminution in Helen's anxiety, greatly minimized the possibility of scribal errors. And I think we've talked about that before, is like the first 4 or 5 chapters, there was a lot of personal material that when they could, as Helen and Ken went through the material, and Helen and Bill at different times, from what I understand, they took the things that were specific to them that couldn't be generalized and omitted it. But the stuff that they could be generalized, that applied to all of us, they changed only to the extent necessary to make it apply to everyone, so that it wasn't just about them. It was really about all of us, and what we're doing with our minds, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least that's my understanding.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Ken continues. The message continues with a discussion of karma, a topic that was of great interest to Helen and Bill during this time period. Its inclusion showing the influence of the work of Edgar Casey on Helen. And then now the quoted material from Jesus about the question of karma. Most theories of reincarnation are essentially magical, and the whole question is not really necessary to religion at all. The chief value of the concept lies in its helpfulness in counteracting the idea of hell, a belief that is hard for the ego to relinquish. As the symbol of separation, the ego cannot escape guilt feelings, and fear of punishment is inevitable. Do not dwell on these fearful thoughts. One of the main dangers of karmic theories is the tendency to It induces to engage in the genetic fallacy, overlooking the truly religious fact that now is the only time. It's interesting. He said the truly religious fact. I kind of reminded of Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Seagull and Illusions, said, that religion is or should be a way of finding out what is true. And always like that definition. It's like, okay, if that's how we're using it, then that would be the true religion. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that brings us back together,
Hmm. And
which is
we
most
all are
important.
eternally together in the now, despite what our mind has done with all these now moments that we seemingly have squandered in supporting ego's campaign,
Exactly.
if you will.
Yeah. Uh, and,
Yeah.
and and the term religious, I mean, it is to tie us back together. We relig
Oh yeah,
our
yeah, yeah. You're right, right. Like a ligament.
yeah. Or religion,
Right.
we bring us back together. So the
Oh
truly
yeah.
religious fact is
Hmm.
that now is the only time. And that's, I mean, that is, I mean, today's lesson, that's all our lessons
Hmm.
are, now this is no other time but now.
Yep.
Uh, this is the moment, and the holy instant is the place. So be there, be square.
Yeah. Something like that.
I
Or
don't care.
tetrahedral or something, right?
Yeah, or something like that. Oh my gosh. You want to read on or you want me to read?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is Ken again. We have already discussed Helen's interest in the subject of reincarnation, despite her later protests to the contrary. Here, Jesus is cautioning us against throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Even though the concept is inherently illusory, belief in reincarnation can serve a helpful purpose for some people. In the end, however, a belief in the reality of karma or reincarnation as viable concepts must be discarded, as they are still obviously linked to a linear view of time, which is one of the ego's magic tricks to obscure the reality of eternity. The genetic fallacy, quote unquote, a belief the ego eagerly sponsors, reduces all current behavior and feelings to the past, whether attributable to former lives, genetic, genetic makeup, or early developmental experiences. The truth, of course, is that everything we do, think, or feel comes only from a decision made by the mind in the present.
Hmm.
Quote, now is the only time. So, Ken is really pointing out that this idea that we have that linear time exists and that cause and effect is something that is, you did this to me, so this is what happened, and this is what happened when my mom did this, and this, all these ideas that we have of cause and effect are meaningless
Hmm.
because there's only one cause, and that is God, and there's only one effect, and that is love.
Yeah. And though I like the way you phrase that, you did this to me. It usually is almost always an implication of, I don't want this guilt tag, you're it. You're the guilty party. Now I'm off the hook. And so in a sense, we can really look at the ego's use of time as always in some fashion or another, perpetuating special love and special hate. Special hate being the uh, immediate guilt, but the special love is sort of like the time delayed guilt.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And just the whole idea, how many folks do you know? I definitely do it myself sometimes. Look to the past and say, this is the reason I'm doing this, or this is the reason I'm thinking this, or this is the reason. And there is no cause of any of these mistakes other than, my belief that there is a past and that there are influences that can make me change or be something different than God made. And it's just not possible. So so this whole idea, and I have so gosh, how many groups am I in where you know folks are like, well, my mom did this and my dad didn't do that, and my ex-husband did this, and the whole living in the past and seeing that that thinking that that's the cause of my current situation is ridiculous, because my current situation is caused by my own thinking right now. Now this is it. So
And the instability of the present moment gives us cause for a special love about the past, which we call nostalgia, which of course is unfounded because we never really were happy in the dream. Um, and then the special hate of the future we call fear, because we think that we pulled off this impossible crime, and as egos we feel guilty, and yet there's that that crime is impossible. But until we see that, we're going to mostly unconsciously sabotage our peace by finding ways to punish ourselves either directly or indirectly, and that's just needless suffering. The course points out it's just I have to really look at my mind to get free of the ego's tyranny.
yeah, absolutely, and all suffering is needless.
Hmm.
All
Hmm.
of it. We're having it because we're asking for it. And
Hmm.
until I see that I'm the one who asked for it, I'm going to think it's something happening to me, and I'm helpless. And so don't think that you're helpless, because we are powerful powerful beings. It's,
We're powerful enough to make up a whole universe just as uh, you could call it an amusement park to project our unconscious unfounded guilt onto, but it's not really that amusing when we look at it carefully.
no, it's
And,
not.
and when we look at it carefully, it's like, well, why don't I just wake up from this and take everyone with me?
Exactly, exactly. And take everyone with me, because guess what? That's where everyone is. They're in
Hmm.
my mind right now.
Exactly, exactly. And
And
that's the only way we're going to get out of our nightmare is by recognizing that everyone's having the same issue. And if I heal my mind, then I don't need to worry about anyone else's because that's um, it's automatic that I will be sharing that healing with all minds, even though I don't understand how that works.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But I can understand that I can understand that Jesus is telling me that it's true, and I have no reason to believe otherwise,
Hmm.
because everything else here makes perfect sense. So, if Jesus tells me in the course, when you bring your mind to peace, peace will be in the world, basically is what he's saying. Then why would I not believe that that's a possibility? So, so grateful for that. Um, okay, so Jesus now returns to the accuracy of Helen's note taking, here referring to the letters and notes that preceded the scribing of the course, which we discussed in chapters 6 and 7. So this is Jesus again. In answer to what Bill mentioned, some of the things Helen said before the notes started are true, some of them fact, and others symbolic. On occasion, she was projecting, and several times she was merely being manipulative, though this was very rare and never attempted consciously. She also really tried to be honest about this, even though it made her ego feel very fearful of, quote, being abandoned, unquote. And again, I just want to say this is Helen is writing this stuff down.
Hmm. Hmm.
She's talking, Jesus is telling her, this is what you did, but, he's making it very third person, I think. And it's just really very, very interesting the way that it's being expressed here.
And I think that's an excellent example and model for all of us to let that information through so we can, when we truly look at ourselves, look at how we use our mind, we can have that clarity just as if we hired an inner, inspired psychotherapist in our mind to just watch the contents of our mind and give us a transcript that we can just look at objectively and say, oh, here's what I was doing. Sure enough.
Sure enough.
And not in any kind of, you know, you know, condemning way, but just to show us how when we're not at peace, it's only because we've chosen the wrong teacher. I keep coming back that wonderful line that's short and sweet. This, Holy Son of God, you have not. I'm paraphrasing, I think, slightly, but you have not sinned, but you've been much mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. All right. So yeah, he's saying you made these mistakes and it's, because you were fearful. Um, but that we can fix it. We can
Hmm.
fix it. Always we can fix it.
Yep.
It
Yep.
says, let's see.
Should I read on?
Sure.
Okay. We're at the bottom of 295 here. Ken says this last statement refers to the fear of Helen's ego, that if she exposed her manipulations, which always served to keep the special person bound to her, Bill would leave her. Jesus then reassures Helen that the course is perfectly safe. And here's the quoted material. I told you I would edit the notes with you when it was helpful to do so. At present, it is not needed, but when we are sure what we should do with things, we can consider it again. And then brackets, Ken writes, the complete consideration of the editing awaited my coming on the scene, as we shall discuss in part 3. And then he continues, I have already told you in connection with the Edgar Casey, and she misspelled it there, I guess, as in Casey at the bat, and SIC in brackets, um, that out of respect for his great efforts on my behalf, I would not let his life work lead to anything but truth in the end. And then another note in brackets by Ken, the notes on Casey, which I've deleted, were scribed in late November 1965. And then the last little bit here is these notes are part of your life work, and I will treat them with equal respect. So anyway, so yeah, I've got a friend in our Wednesday evening class who's studied the Edgar Casey material much more than I ever have, and I think the idea is that we're all tuned in. I was also listening yesterday to um, the Foundation for Inner Peace has their roughly monthly webinar, and this one they were doing it on clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and I don't think there's one for clear video, but
Could be.
but but
I
but but, but
attended that too. So yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Anyways, but I thought it was just kind of interesting is that we we can all tune into uh anything in the dream that we want, but it all gets back to, well, what is it for? Why am I doing it? I think that's always the important question that we can ask ourselves, right? Am I doing this because I want to increase specialness, or do I want to transcend that?
Right, exactly. And sometimes, I know I've always been, clairvoyant and clairaudient. I think we all are. I think because of our connection, we are all. I think a lot of us just tune it out because we, don't want to experience that connection. And sometimes it may be really intrusive. But in reality, because we're one mind, how could we not
Yeah.
have that clair going on there? It's just how much you're allowing to push through or
Yep.
allow through. And for some folks, because and I don't want to make anything special because, of course, that this is a big deal. Nowadays, people talk about being empath or having natural empathy. Of course, I mean, that in itself is just ridiculous because we all have natural empathy. We are all empaths because we're one mind.
Yeah.
You can't not be. Um, it's just how much of it you're allowing to get through. And sometimes people are more have bigger barriers, greater barriers that prevent them from hearing those things. So
Right.
Anyway, our time is almost up here,
Yeah,
but
and I'm going to scoot, but I want to thank you, Lynn, as always, for a wonderful hour of conversation on Saturday mornings, and look forward to the next one.
yeah, thank you so much, Bruce, and I do
Virtual
appreciate.
hugs to all.
Yeah, virtual hugs to all. I love you, Bruce, and have fun in the Arizona. Uh, I'm sure it's a little bit warmer there than it is here, but
Yeah.
probably not much. We're getting toward the that time.